all we say to America is be true to what you said on paper. If I lived in China or even Russia or any totalitarian country, maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right. And so just as I say we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around, we aren't going to let any injunction turn us around. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
Welcome to the Gilchrist experience. Now, for me, that's one of the most profound statements that I've witnessed in my lifetime. I mean, that moves me every time I see it. Here's a man that fought tooth and nail for justice, for a way of life which we, as we read and we learned to follow the Constitution, we're promised certain creeds. All men are created equal. So we come up as survivors of the Black Holocaust in America, and we come up straight-laced and trying to abide by the rules so we can enjoy some of this freedom that we claim that to have. If you do right, you get right.
Right. Yeah.
So as I read here and there, and now we have today's uplift, and we have us fighting amongst each other as we displayed. Community Cop made some statements about National Action Network and some other comments that were fake news or whatever it was. I gave each of you a copy of Michael's statements about National Action Network, which were, it was silly, looking for attention. Or that's how we fight amongst each other. Over what? Over some phony hearsay, nothing to do with the struggle or what Martin stood for. And he had some bad things say about National Action Network. And to me, National Action Network is a byproduct of Martin Luther King. I mean, that's why I'm there. And I've been there 21 years. And I follow it because Reverend Sharpton is a disciple. I mean, we all should be disciples of Martin. I think he had the right way to go about it. And that's our guest calling. But threw me off. What I'm trying to say is that at any time in our history that we should show some unity is to gang up on the follow the lead of Martin Luther King. Let's do it the right way. Get out and vote and take out our heritage into serious. I mean, we deserve so much more than what we get in this country because we fought hard, and we deserve it because we are the foundation of this country. We're the spiritual people of this country, and Martin shows it. And I just put that up there to say to everyone out there about National Action Network, we're disciples of Martin Luther King. That's why I'm there. I've been there 21 years, and I dedicated my whole being to helping our people. And whichever way, that's what this show is about. It's about love energy, man. This is not about hate. Hate destroys the inner person. And that's why I always say the God in me loves the God in you, because it's real. Because I love all my brothers. We might disagree about anything and everything, but in our hearts, we're all brothers. And we fight for the struggle of justice. All right? So just waiting for one of the people from National Action Network, a new member, and we're just going to take into toll what Martin sacrificed for. He said one day we will reach the promised land. The promised land will be that black people treat each other right. That's what I'm looking forward to. Brother being brothers to brother. Instead of this nonsense of we're fighting over nonsense. So that's my answer to what we saw. And any comments from you brothers about what we're talking about? Or the split there, or whatever silliness Michael was thinking about.
What I think of is the brother whose given name was Stokely Carmichael. He left out of here saying, organize, organize, organize. That was a theme out of the Million Man March. When you left here, go join some organization.
Right.
Adopt a black child. Keep your marriages together as best you can. Organize, organize, organize. We suffer because we lack knowledge, and then we're not organized, and there are other factors involved. So I've been to National Action Network. I have no problem going there. I've been to Corinthian Baptist Church, Canaan Baptist Church. I'm a member of the Nation of Islam, but I travel to Reverend Youngblood's church over in Pegasus, right? The one
on Tompkins Avenue.
Yeah.
Tompkins,
and the point I'm making is that you go, we can't make it by being insular, being just in my little corner. We got to travel around and cross-pollinate. We have ideas that may not fly in the organization that we're in, but we have to find an organization that can house our creative ideas so we can lend to theirs. So the divisions that we tend to see have to be explored one-on-one and get the information from the individual, get the truth out, and when necessary, defend what we have to defend. Last but not least, the Minister Farrakhan has been, over the years, he's been a target within the black community.
Of course.
And within the black community, and those of us in the nation know it.
Right.
You know, be on YouTube, some guy who wouldn't otherwise have an audience if it wasn't for the fact that he was talking against Brother Minister Farrakhan. But Brother Minister Farrakhan has not come out and not allowed his ministers to chastise those individuals, because that feeds into something that is greater than what we would want to happen. Because the enemy thrives off of our division that occurs among us naturally. I'm just talking about envy and jealousy being, and also planted. And that both we have to watch out for.
All right.
Definitely.
Let me give a chance to, we'll come back to you in a minute, Grant. But just, I just want you to go to item Pamela, so we can have her on the set here. A little tardy, but just run item. Well, it says Pamela. Remember which one, Stanley?
Committee Chairperson Pamela Stewart Martinez will bring us in the House this morning. In the House is about the work that the committees do here at the House of Justice, where we try to keep the action going 24/7 because the doors of justice are always open.
Hi, I was just up here a few minutes ago, Pam Stewart Martinez, speaking to you about education. And I never thought that, because I come to the rallies every week, that I would be on the crisis list myself. Okay, but I was. I walked into Youth Huddle, I received a phone call that my daughter was stopped by Port Authority police in DC. And they were holding her and seizing her property, her cell phone and her luggage. So she wouldn't have been able to call me. And couldn't get anyone on the phone to really explain exactly what was going on. But as soon as I walked into the House of Justice and I spoke to Katrina Jefferson, she calmed my nerves. When I finished speaking to her, she suggested that I call William Allen the next day. And I was unnerved all night long, but I realized that I had help because I was part of this network, and I had this family. Talking to my husband, we were like, what are we gonna do? I was like, I gotta get to DC, I gotta be there for my baby. I spoke to William Allen in transit to DC. He gave me the phone number of Ebony Riley. Before I got down to DC, Ebony was working, man was working. I called the Port Authority Police Department, and I have to tell you, they were not very polite. They were not helpful. At one point, a lieutenant said to me, we don't have to explain our operation to you. Less than an hour and a half later, guess what? He explained his entire operation to me. That's what happens when you have a Nan family behind you. So I have to encourage you, please support Nan. I have to encourage you, get into the action, be a part of the Nan community. And I have to ask you to become a member because you never know. You have family throughout the nation and beyond. Thank you.
Welcome back. That's Pamela, a relatively new member of NAN, but she expressed what happens when you join NAN. Thank you for coming to the show today.
Thank you for having me today.
Well, tell us what happened to your daughter.
My daughter is an alumni from Spelman College.
Oh, wow, okay. Amen.
She was an economics major.
Okay.
She has her bachelor's degree from Spelman.
Okay.
She attended homecoming.
Okay.
So she met up with her sisters at Spelman, spent time with them, and was returning back from Atlanta. She recently moved to DC. She started a new job there, and she's doing well. She's living what she thought was the American dream. You work hard in school,
Right.
you get a job,
Exactly.
you live your life, and you be a productive member of society.
Right.
And the Port Authority police officer came up to her and asked her where she was coming from. She was polite. She answered back. She said, I just came back from Georgia. He said, why were you there? She then said, homecoming. He told her, homecoming was 2 weeks ago. She said, different colleges have different homecomings. So then he started asking her which college she went for homecoming. Then he told her how he didn't get accepted at Morehouse. He guesses he wasn't smart enough. He asked her for her boarding pass. She complied. He asked her if she lived in Washington. She said yes. He asked her for her state ID and then became very angry when she produced her New York state ID because she just recently moved to DC. And she explained that to him. He wanted to know where she worked. He wanted to know if she had a roommate. And the questions went on and on.
This is a black police officer.
Yes.
A Negro.
Negro.
Yes.
No,
Yes.
no. Let's not down Negroes. Negroes built this country. Before they were black people, they were Negro. I'll take one Negro against 100 black people. Please
Semantics,
go on.
okay.
I'll take a Negro. My grandfather was a Georgia sharecropper. He was a Negro.
Semantics.
Based on your spirit, your grandfather was a black man.
Can we get to the story, gentlemen?
Oh yeah, back to you.
So then he said that her luggage didn't pass the criteria because the canines had smelled something on her luggage. And she said, when? The canines were nowhere near me. And he's like, well, I don't have to explain that to you. They did. So I'm going to need to seize your luggage. So she said, well, I give you permission to look through my luggage now. And you can have the canines look through my luggage now. And he said, no, we're not going to do that. But I do need to have the canines smell your pocketbook and your jacket. So the canines actually smelled her pocketbook, smelled her jacket. I'm assuming they didn't smell anything. They actually walked right past her luggage. They weren't even the slightest bit interested in her luggage.
The dog would have sat down if there was something in her luggage.
Luggage,
So it sounds like the guy was just trying to get to know your daughter.
and I don't think she was interested.
Okay. Right.
He,
So
according
he went to
her,
this extreme.
Exactly. According to her, he seemed old enough to be her father.
Oh, okay.
So after that, after a while, she said, okay, I really don't want any trouble. I have to go to work tomorrow. Then the questions about her job started. And she said, well, if you need to keep my luggage, that's fine. You can keep my luggage. So then that seemed like it bothered him, and he was like, well, we're going to need to keep your cell phone. And she said, why do you need my cell phone? He said, because your boarding pass was sent to you in an email, more than likely. And Virginia state law says that if your boarding pass is on your cell phone, then we have the right to take it. So then she said, but you have my boarding pass in your hand, the paper copy. Why do you need my cell phone? And this means that I can't call my family, I can't call a cab. That means I'm pretty much stranded. And he goes, no, you can take a cab home. And so there was back and forth about the phone, and she said, okay, I just need to call my family. I need to call my mother. She couldn't get me on the phone. I was in transit, so she got her father on the phone, and he became very angry when he heard her father's voice. He was like, well, you said you were calling your mother. Now you're calling your father? I really don't understand why someone would be upset over that. She spoke to her father. He said, just remain calm, give him what he wants, take a cab home. I'll get in touch with your mother. And so she was completely frightened and unnerved because there are some good police officers out there, but there are some police officers who, if you rub them the wrong way, they may do some things that may hurt you in some form or fashion.
And it's our own kind. It's
And
the way we treat
sometimes
one another.
It can be people
Well, that's
that look
exactly
like
what we were
us.
just talking about.
So how long ago was this?
This was actually last week, if you could believe it.
This is recent. You see, when you heard the statement there, that was just last Saturday.
Now, she was free to go home? Or they held her?
They held her first, and then eventually they
On what
let her go
charge?
home.
What was the charge?
There was no charge. They said that they had probable cause because of the canine or something like that. But eventually they let her leave, but she couldn't leave without any of her property. And the interesting part was the police officer said, I can make this easy for you if you give me your PIN number to your phone. Because if we find any drugs in your bag, we're going to be able to get a court order to go through your phone. So why don't you make it easy for us now and give us your PIN number?
No, because you haven't found any drugs in her bag or her luggage. So you have, and without a warrant, you're not going to get that. One of the things when a person is stopped, after the initial questioning and on, the question is, excuse me, officer, am I under arrest?
Right, okay, all right.
You're asking me, am I under arrest? Because I got somewhere to go,
Right,
period.
right.
And you have to up it, in essence, if I'm not under arrest, I've been answering your questions, which I don't know where you're going with this, or you haven't explained to me what's going on, but I've got somewhere to go. I'm in transit. I'm going from point A to point B. I've answered your questions, all right? Am I under arrest? If not, I need to be about my business, all right? He's obviously, as he said, he wasn't smart enough to get into Morehouse.
Which is a wonderful institution.
Right, but everybody can't get into
A
Morehouse.
lot of people don't have enough money to go to Morehouse.
For whatever,
you know?
or the intellect. So, but it was obvious that there was something going on here beyond any
Jealousy.
law enforcement necessity.
Jealousy.
If the dogs had picked up a scent, they would have sat down in front of that bag. They would have sat down right there and looked at the trainer and looked at the bag. That didn't happen. He is attempting to infringe on her constitutional rights. You don't have to give a PIN number to a police officer. It's your phone, it's your personal property. Even with videos, sometimes a crime takes place and the police come to collect video. You don't give away video.
Yeah.
They need to have a warrant for that. And if they're not charging her with a crime, she
Right.
doesn't have drugs, so why should she have to surrender her phone and her PIN
We
number?
know the official way you're supposed to do it. What would make a cop do all this?
I don't know. It's totally illogical. But let me ask, what's happening with him now? There was no. They took her to the police station.
No, all of this happened inside the Port Authority. At this point, there are many other officers surrounding her, and some of them
Oh,
have their own dogs.
okay,
Yeah, so she was really intimidated by this whole situation.
So it was more than one officer involved in it.
Initially, it was just one officer, but
Okay.
when the other officers saw that he was spending so much time with her, I'm assuming that's what prompted the rest of them to come, and they were all around
So
her.
they thought it was something serious.
They thought it was something serious, and she could tell by their attitude that they didn't understand
Why he was doing it. Okay.
Right.
So they seemed confused. So I mean, and it was just so much happening, and she was so
What
frustrated.
color was the other officers?
Some of them were black, some of them were Caucasian.
Okay.
But at the end of the whole conversation, he wanted her to then call back to the police department from her roommate's cell phone. And he stressed that. And she was like, Mommy, why would I ever? Why would I ever? It was very intrusive on many levels. The form of
Obviously.
questioning and all of that.
Obviously, Sky was interested in something else other than making it. Well, tell us how all this wound up.
What wound up happening was, like I said, I called William Allen. He's the crisis director at NAN. I spoke to him. He asked me to ask my daughter to write a statement, which she did. She wrote a very detailed statement. We emailed it over to him. I'm sure he emailed it to Ebony Raleigh in DC. I then called up the Port Authority Police Department, and I spoke to a lieutenant there who, I guess he didn't like the number of questions I was asking about the process and what happened, and my concerns about how my daughter was treated. So eventually he was just like, listen, I don't have to explain anything to you. He's like, we were doing what we do. I don't have to explain it to you. We will call you, and you can figure out a way to get in touch with your daughter and tell her when she can come and pick up her package, her luggage, and her phone. But we're allowed to do it. And then he stressed exactly what the other officer said about Virginia state law, which, by the way, I did my own research. I couldn't find
There's no law.
anything
There is no
about
such
that
law.
in Virginia. So they didn't know I was on my way down there. I didn't disclose that. When we got down there, I would say maybe an hour after my daughter sent in her statement, we got a phone call from that same lieutenant basically telling me that it was a sting operation that happened at the airport. That her luggage,
sting
yes,
operation.
her luggage wasn't the only luggage that was seized that night. There were other people's luggage.
But all the police officers are standing around her.
Yes.
So how could they have seized anybody else's luggage?
I asked my daughter the same thing. She said she didn't see anyone else's luggage being taken away from them. And what they did to my daughter's luggage was ridiculous. The wheel from her suitcase was broken off. There were cracks on both sides. Like, I don't know what happened back there.
Like they banged it around or something?
They banged it around. And I think maybe one thing may not have had anything to do with the other thing, but as she's leaving, she's struggling because of that. She went to the claims department, she put in a claim. If you're carrying drugs, are you really gonna go to the claims department and complain that they broke your suitcase?
Yeah, you're going to get out of there as quick as possible.
Exactly. You may not even grab your luggage, but you're going to get out of there. She was very upset. She wanted them to compensate her for the luggage that they broke, and she was leaving. So I have to tell you, it's just very frustrating that this is how we treat
Each other.
And what frustrates me with myself was I'm a mother of 4 boys and 3 girls.
Oh, wow.
And I spoke to all my boys about how to speak to an officer, what to look for. The same things you mentioned just now, I spoke to my boys about it. I didn't think I needed to speak to my girls about it. I fell short in that regard.
Don't blame yourself in any way. I was just with another network earlier today, and I said, let's ask ourselves, where do we get our police officers from? We get them from the overall society. So we have messed up cops, we have messed up teachers, we have messed up presidents, we have messed up senators, we have messed up people everywhere. Unfortunately, under certain situations with certain professions, it's more critical than it is, like say with a shoe salesman. The negative impact that a police officer can have on a person's life, on a person's psyche, is greater than a person who messed up a hamburger or something like. You got home and they didn't give you the cheese on the cheeseburger, you know. So the level of violation is elevated, given the situation. Women are less susceptible to this, but it does happen to women. One of the things is that a complaint, I trust, has been filed.
We have to get the report. They refused to give us the report while I was down there. So I have to literally, and they wouldn't let me handle that. So my daughter's gonna handle it. I'm gonna coach her along the way.
All right.
The whole point of this is that she was saved by the family that she has. The National Action Network family
Nan got
came
involved.
in
Nan
and
got
saved the
involved.
day. So this is happening to everybody else. So I advise everybody to pay attention and join National Action Network if you want protection. All right?
One
so
of the
continue
things-
with how Nan intervened and all
Go
that.
ahead, go ahead.
So like I said, phone calls were made. I mean, William Allen told me he was going to reach out to some elected officials in D.C. personally
Okay.
and speak to them regarding it and have them look into what exactly is happening there
Okay.
and to figure out if my daughter's rights were being infringed upon. And I'm clear that that was the case. Her rights were being infringed upon. This, I don't feel, was really a sting that was happening.
So what do you think it would have happened if Nan hadn't have stepped in?
If Nan hadn't have stepped in, I believe that they would have kept her luggage longer. I think they would have fabricated a reason to actually go into her phone and try to invade her privacy. I
But why?
personally,
Why?
I'm not sure.
Just harassment?
I think also that police officer may have had a little crush on my daughter.
Yeah, that's what I was
Okay,
thinking.
and the mere fact that he was so curious about where she lived and
Yeah,
and
I mean,
asking
it's
her if she
stalking.
has a roommate,
It's obvious.
have your roommate, call the police department, from her cell phone. I mean, these things, I can't understand. And there were a whole bunch of other questions that were asked as well.
Inappropriate.
Very
You're
inappropriate.
just flirting and trying to get to know her better.
But that's not
That's the
what you're
bottom
supposed
line.
to be doing
Of
when
course
you're
not.
at work.
Of course
And
not.
maybe that works with some women. You stop them, you ask questions, and if they're interested, they give you the answer that you want. But when you're tired, you have to be at work the next day, and you're not interested.
So you think if she had been friendlier, she wouldn't have went through all this? Is
I
that
think
what you're
if she
saying?
would have been a little more receptive and, somewhat
that's
interested.
terrible.
No.
What's the bottom line here? What happens to him?
What happens to him is that we get that report that shows that there was no reason to seize her phone,
Right.
because you need a warrant for that. You need probable cause for that. The probable cause for seizing her phone would be if the drugs were found in her luggage.
Right.
There were no drugs found there, so there was no probable cause.
Right.
So, of course, a warrant probably was not issued for that cell phone.
Right.
Now, a complaint should be filed with the department, and you can go to the Justice Department. Preferably you go to the FBI.
Really?
She can file I've done this.
Okay.
She can file a complaint with the FBI against the police officer. They will read her the U.S. Code, which basically says, if you lie to us, you're going to get 5 years. They tell you that right up front. So when you
Okay.
open your mouth, you better be straight.
Okay.
They will interview you. They will interview her. There is a stenographer taking down all the dictation. When the interview is finished, that stenographer is going to type it up, return it to her, and ask her to read it and sign it. If there's anything wrong, she'll note it. They'll go back and retype it, and she will reread it, and then she will sign it. I've done this. I did this with 2 cops here in Manhattan. Unbeknownst to me, in the incident that I had, when these 2 cops attacked me, and they regretted attacking me, there was a reporter for one of the Spanish newspapers. And this was by 35th Street by Macy's.
Wow.
He was a witness to it. I don't know how they found this guy, but the FBI found this guy. He was a reporter. And they said to me, Weatherspoon, everything you said was true. I said, there's no reason to lie. The truth speaks for itself. Now, the violation of my civil rights and constitutional rights was the issue. I did that at 26 Federal Plaza. The same day of the incident, I went down there. We left Midtown South. I told my inspector, because I was so angry, I handed my weapon to my inspector.
Oh, my goodness.
And I told him I was going to kill somebody if he didn't hold that weapon, and I meant it. All right? So she can go to the FBI, keeping in mind who the Attorney General is, who the President is, and whether or not they'll even follow up on it. But the complaint has to be filed, because he'll do it again.
Exactly.
And then your daughter should feel guilty for not having filed a complaint if there's another victim and it's even worse. This is where we have to look beyond our own situation and think about those coming behind us.
Good.
See, whether we get satisfaction or not, Lavoti killed Baez in the Bronx over a football bouncing off the sector car. There were 14 prior civilian complaints on Lavoti.
Right.
14.
Wow.
And they kept him in uniform because his uncle was an inspector.
Right.
So, but the
It's-
complaints have to be filed.
And what are the cops going to say? They'll cover their tracks, probably.
Well-
But you know what I want to do is that I want to follow this up about the Saturday at Urt Nan, because Reverend Sharpton was especially, and that's church for me. You see, I tithe every week. This is church. And I just want you to hear Reverend Sharpton in the end of that sermon where God is real. I mean, in these times, we need a pastor, and Reverend Sharpton is my pastor, you know, in my life. So that's why I played Martin Luther King last speech. We played, that opened up the show here.
Oh, wow.
So you missed that. And I was telling him that, I was talking about Reverend Sharpton being a disciple of Martin, you know, because he comes out of that whole school. And I want you to play this the sermon. I think it's number 4. If that's not right, we'll come back and start it over. Play number 4 for me. This is a hell of a sermon.
You said hell?
And sermon together.
Hell of a sermon. It caused problems in hell. That's what happened.
No, but see, and I think that's what people need to realize. What allows people to get away with mistreating us?
Silence of the lambs.
Yeah.
Silence, but also us not being united and us
Yeah, that's
backbiting
it.
one another,
That's
you
right.
know, and not working together as a united front.
Mr. President, thank you for doing this. There's been a lot of energy as you've been traveling the last few days.
Right.
You just finished a rally here in Fayetteville, and you've said your legacy is on the ballot. Yet there are reports that the African-American vote is not exactly where they would want it. How do we translate the energy that you clearly inspire and the message that you've inspired about your legacy into actual votes?
Well, look, the good news is that what we've seen over the last several days is in Florida, in North Carolina, in places all across the country, votes generally have been up. You've seen in the African American community big surges in early vote, big surges in Latino vote, big surges in youth vote. And so if we can just sustain what we've done over the last several days, then I will feel good about the ultimate turnout results. But what is true is that in part because I think a lot of people still can't believe that Donald Trump would be elected president, there may be a complacency setting in. And you know, the main thing that I've been trying to explain to people is that if you supported me in 08, if you supported me in 12, if you think that I've done a good job, if you believe that Michelle's done a good job, everything that we've done over the last 8 years will be reversed with a Trump presidency. And everything will be sustained and built on with a Hillary Clinton presidency. So this vote is as important as any of those other 2 votes in being able to maintain a progressive agenda that keeps 20 million people with health insurance and hopefully gets the next 20 million, that makes sure that we're working on issues like criminal justice reform, and somebody who actually wants to see a reinvigorated civil rights office in the Justice Department, that wants to make sure that things like early childhood education get put in place so that our young people can all get the benefits of a great education at the earliest stages all the way through college. You can't say you care about those things and then suggest somehow that you're feeling cynical or you're not sufficiently inspired. Michelle and I, we talk over the dinner table. We explain to our daughters, not everything's supposed to be inspiring. Sometimes you just do what you have to do, and one of the things you got to do right now is to make sure to vote for Hillary Clinton.
You've actually criticized Trump for having the support of KKK sympathizers. I mean, this is frightening for many people in this country, but I don't know if it has come home to them.
Well, look, I've been critical, not that somebody decides to support him, but that the fact that he doesn't immediately disown that support and sends signals that he is okay with discrimination against minorities, that he's okay or sympathetic with respect to discrimination towards Muslims. These are things that he says on an ongoing basis. comments that would have once been considered completely disqualifying by a Democratic or Republican candidate. Imagine if I, when I had been running, had said 1/10 of the things that Donald Trump has said. People would have immediately said that person's not qualified to be president. If Hillary Clinton right now said just a fraction of the things that Mr. Trump said, people would be outraged, and the Republicans would say, you can't have that person serving. And it's not just with respect to his attitudes towards minorities, it's his lack of respect for the Constitution. I mean, when you stand on a presidential debate stage and you say to your political opponent, I'm going to throw you in jail, that's what happens in banana republics. That's what happens in a lot of countries around the world that are run by authoritarians. And so I take him at his word when he says that he admires somebody like a Vladimir Putin. And the fact that you've got Republicans who in the past have criticized me for even talking to Russians,
Right.
and now feel comfortable with supporting somebody who considers the former head of the KGB as a role model, indicates that either they know better and they don't care, or they don't know better.
You know, that was a Freudian slip. You know, maybe we need to really hear that one first. See, the point is that I brought this up because you look in hindsight, and this is October 2016. Now, that was a blessing from God for me, Obama. I mean, it was just perfect for the times, and he did a fair job. He was a fair person. He was an American president, not a black president.
That's right.
He was an American president. He followed the Constitution. He didn't show preference to anybody. Matter of fact, he was half black, half white. His father was a real African. You know, he was really half African. The rest of us are watered down Africans. We got a couple of people to go back to. But the whole point is that in these times, we can look back in hindsight to see a real president. And he forecast what would happen. And naturally, this is what bothers me so much about what's happening today and what Trump is doing to us as Americans. I mean, you're in this country, you're American. So I don't see why we are not sticking together and fighting evil. I mean, this man is demonic. We in New York know him better as a New York hustler. We're old enough to remember what kind of player he was during the 70s and the 80s. And he's always been King Trump. He's got an ego bigger than anybody's, and you can see he's a gangster. He's working with the Russian mafia for years out on Coney Island, you know, all this. And if you're in real estate, you can't. How can you own a casino and not be tied to the mafia? You can't do it. It's impossible. So we've got a gangster in the White House. And how did he get there? Bullying everybody. And why are the Republicans doing what they're doing? And Obama saw it coming, didn't he? He know what will happen if he was elected.
You make an interesting point that ties in with Pamela's daughter, and that is Trump's presence and what he said gives a cover for Negroes, white supremacists, etc., to do what happened to her daughter.
Like nobody cares about black people.
There's a license.
Yeah. That's right.
It's not that nobody cares. We care when we learn about your situation. Your daughter's, well, it's your situation, it's your daughter. But there's a license that's in the atmosphere.
That's it.
That I can get away with this,
That's
and this.
That's right.
Using the cover of the blue uniform.
Right. Doesn't matter what color it was.
Okay.
And especially, I think it's especially serious when we do it to each other. That's what the problem is. We abuse each other worse than anything else because we know nobody's there to protect us, all right? We know we got a cracker in the White House, and it's all going to come down us. So we think less of ourselves because of that?
The doing it to ourselves relates to who we think we are.
Okay, there you go.
We
Not
look
knowing
upon
that we're
ourselves,
kings and
we're
queens.
the product of an environment of white supremacy, the
Okay.
illusion
Right.
of white
Right.
supremacy, where black people are garbage.
Right.
In the Constitution, it says 3/5, 60% of a human being. Before the founding fathers signed off on this bad boy, the elites of
Okay.
the society at that time protecting their progeny, I think it says. Progeny. That's what the Constitution is about.
Well, they did it to women too, so.
Straight out of England, straight out of France,
Mm-hmm.
the woman didn't have a place.
That's right.
Okay? So that's inherited over here. We in turn internalize that garbage. That's why we're having problems within our own families.
Okay.
All right, we came over here, we were brought over here intact, and they split us off. Right? I mentioned Kwame Ture in the beginning of Stokely Carmichael's. Kwame Ture, he said, organize, organize, organize. And I think that organizing, at the very minimum, takes place in our own families.
Okay.
Because our own families.
But also, we have to be less judgmental of one another.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps a lot of our young people from wanting to come to certain organizations. We have to empower our youth. We have to not be afraid to pass on knowledge and the reins to them in a less than judgmental kind of way. When I go to National Action Network, what I love about it is they have Youth Huddle.
Oh,
Why
yeah.
do they have
Yeah,
Youth
that's
Huddle?
great. Yeah.
Youth Huddle is there so that children understand what their rights are, but also they understand their past and they relate it to today, and it empowers them for the future. So at one point that used to be the church.
Yeah. Well,
And-
I said National Action, it was church for me.
Right. So we need to figure out a way to bring us all together under one roof so we
Right.
can be powerful together.
That's
They
God.
figured out a way to divide us all. You know, with this biracial, with this you're Hispanic and you're not black. There, I remember growing up in Harlem, and I don't remember there being that divide with the Hispanic community and the black community. We were all one, from what I remember.
See, but this is the
It was
indoctrination
it was
like
that
you
way
were
in the
talking
50s
about.
too.
Yeah, because Ronald Reagan came up with the term white Hispanic. No such thing as a Hispanic. There is no such thing. Any more than there's no such thing as a West Indian.
That's the
No such thing. I was
Semantics again.
doing a lecture at Mega. No, I'm not West. No, you're not. Stop repeating the stupidity of these Europeans.
Of the oppressor.
Columbus didn't know where the devil he was. He didn't discover anything. The guy was lost, all right? If the Europeans had read the Bible, they would have known the world was round long before. Ignorance, repeating the ignorance of a fool makes you even dumber than he is. There's no such thing as an Indian in the Western Hemisphere. Indians come from one place, India. There are no Indians here. You're not a West Indian because you're born in Jamaica. No such place as the West Indies. You're an African who was brought out of West Africa and dropped in an island somewhere along the line. Whether you got off at Borough Hall in Brooklyn, City Hall in Manhattan, or 125th Street, don't make any difference where you got dropped off. You are what you are. You are not a West Indian, all right? You got people in Africa think they're French in Senegal because they speak French. These are the mind manipulations. When I was in the Gambia, President Yame said to me, he says, "Well, Spoon, if we had 100 people like you, we could turn this continent around." He said, "My neighbor next door thinks he's French." Didn't Malcolm say just because a
Brainwashed.
cat has a kitten in an oven, that don't make them biscuits?
Well, you know, the whole point is that it's a propaganda machine that's
Right.
ruling the world today. And that's exactly what we have in the White House, a propaganda machine. And we have to watch every move that's happening to us today. Because I think this is merely a test of our spirituality. Now, we have to come out with a black soul or spirituality. We're the spiritual people of the planet. And that love energy, you feel that Nan, and I was going to play that piece, but we don't have enough time. It's going. Well, let me see if we can run that piece. I want you to hear this sermon. We're running out of time, but I think it's worthy of your attention. So run that last piece there, number 5. And we'll right back at you. Won't have much time when we come back. But I want you to listen to Reverend Sharpton last Saturday. All right? Let's play this piece. You'll enjoy this. You remember, he was on.
It was beautiful.
Number 5.
Then knock on the door Friday night. Say, what you doing tomorrow? I'm going to take you to the rally. You busy? I'm busy tomorrow. Well, what about next Saturday? I'll give you something to do. There's plenty for you to do. Because everything that was fought for is at stake. And you don't have no day that you can take off. It's time for everybody to go to work. That's why I was listening when Tyrone was singing this morning. Sometimes you need to think about what God brought you through. What that song you were singing this morning? But there are some places that I cannot go. And the reason he got to the refrain that yes, God is real, is he started by talking about what he'd been through and places he couldn't go. Then he hit that high note that I taught him how to do, but we'll talk about that later. But you don't know that God is real till you start with there are some things I don't know. And there's some places I don't go. The reason I know God is real is because of what I've been through. When I was a little boy and my mother brought me to watch the temple at 3, I went by what my mother told me. Then they made me go to Sunday school and Sunday afternoon YPWW. I went by what they taught me. But as I grew older and went through days of turmoil, went through heartbreaks, betrayals and disappointments, and God brought me through. As I became known and read ugly lies in the newspapers, when I had to face people that I knew hated me and didn't know me, that's when I knew what they taught me, that my God is real. Because he brought me through what I couldn't have got through by myself. People stop me all the time. I spoke this week down in Chattanooga, Tennessee. God told me, I've been watching you Reverend Al 40 years. I said, yeah, but the real story is that I'm still here. And all I've been through, I'm still here. But the reason I can celebrate it is I got enough sense to know that I didn't last by myself. I couldn't have made it through what I've been through on my own. There is a God that'll make a way for you. And if you show him you appreciate him, he'll give you a little more. There are many days my enemies counted me out. And they were right. But God counted me back in. Every time I was ready to throw in the towel, sometimes nobody knew but me. But the days I didn't talk about is the time I say I can't take it no more, and I threw in the towel, and God grabbed the towel and threw it back. And say, stand up anyhow. You ain't quitting yet. I'm not through with you yet. Fred, stand up. Some of y'all never gave up. Some of y'all never gave in. But there were days I gave up and God wouldn't let me go. It says stand up anyhow. I know you've gotten weak. I know you fell out, but I'm going to hold you up anyhow. Because if I can hold you up, people will see what I can do. I know you through, but I'm not through. God is still on the throne. That's why I know God is real. Why? Because he made a way out of no way. Why? Because he blessed me when I didn't think I had no blessings coming. Why? Because when my friends walked away, he built a fence all around me. Why? Because when I was sick with no health insurance, he was my doctor. When I was in the courthouse with no lawyer, he went in the jury room and turned the jury around. I know he's real. My God is real. He walks with me. He talks with me. He tells me I'm his own. Yes, God is real. Yes, God is real. Yes, God is real.
It's real for me. That's right there. Now, that's just one Saturday. I'm there every Saturday. If you heard me yelling, tell them, Rev. That's what I do there. And that, to me, is church. And you know, Gilchrist means worker for Christ. So it's no it's no reason.
It's a shoe that fits.
You know, shoe fits. And that's what we're doing here. We're bringing, like I say every week, the God in me loves the God in you. And you people with no God in you, you learn, because God is real.
Pamela's
And we show
situation
right here.
is in Nan has that structure, has a Will Allen that would take up the cause with her.
Right?
There are churches, there's mosques that don't have that facility.
Exactly.
So the organization factor in terms of you organize around your orbit, whatever your strength is.
Mm-hmm.
And then combined, we can do a lot more than what we have not been doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I want to say this one thing that David White,
Say
he's a
goodbye to
Harlemite
Manhattan.
who grew up in the Harlem River Projects. His memorial service is at Abyssinian Baptist Church this coming Saturday at 10 a.m.
Bye to Manhattan. Power to the people. We have another minute for the Bronx. Our buddy, what's his name? Wrote the book, Sugar.
Ted Wilson.
Ted Wilson emailed me about David White.
David White, yeah.
All right.
David White.
Any parting words for Thomas?
Well, I agree totally with what you said. And if we can get all of the facets of our community to come together, if Nan and our mosques and our churches can all come together,
That's
the
what we're trying to do
force
here.
that we could build and how we could change government and how we can uplift people in our community to be leaders that actually fight for our community would be amazing. And I hope I have an opportunity to see that.
Well, I hope I see all of you in church on Saturday. It's at every week at 106 West 145th Street. That's National Action Network. Power to the people. Love you, Rev. Power to the people.
My God is real,
amen.
for I can feel.
Rev should love that one, right?
Yeah, he should. That was beautiful.
That
That was beautiful.
was a great sermon. Yeah, I mean.
Oh my God.